Hello everybody and welcome back to the next video in our How to Make an Avatar series. So today we are going to be starting up in Unity, and like I had said at the end of the last video, this video is going to be a little bit more of like a kind of introduction into Unity, kind of like how we had at the start of Blender as far as like how to navigate it, how to import things like that. We will start doing a few things in Unity when it comes to the actual avatar, but that is a very small part of what this video is going to cover. Today we're going to start importing our avatar, our materials, all the tools that we talked about in the last video, like pumpkins and making sure we have gesture managers set up and VRC Fury, all that kind of stuff, which we had also covered in the last video with adding that on Creator Companion. But I'm also going to just do a little bit of a recap just to make sure that you guys are set on how to import that stuff, just in case I didn't go into it in enough detail last time. So it's going to be quite a few things that we're covering in today's video, but it's a bunch of like smaller things to kind of get us going. In the next video, we will start with like actually creating our materials and setting up fizz bones, things like that. Unity is definitely, I said it before with Blender, where you can really do things in whatever order is best for you. So the order that I do things in Unity is definitely not like the only way to do it. You can go through and set up your fizz bones first. You can set up your materials first if you want to. It's totally up to you what order you do things. You don't have to do things exactly like I do. This is just my preferred method of going through in Unity. It's just kind of what I found is my best workflow. I'll try to keep everything as short and concise as much as I can, since there is quite a bit to cover. But since Unity is where, like I said before, we're going to make the avatar actually work and function, there's going to be quite a lot to cover, and it's definitely going to take up the majority of this series. So that being said, let's go ahead and get started, and just like I said, kind of start focusing on putting things into Unity and kind of getting it ready to actually start on our model, because there is quite a bit of a setup that we're going to need to do before we can truly start working on the model. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Alright, so as promised in my last video, I have a fully blank Unity scene. I had thought about maybe importing some stuff in here just because my computer is very old, and it takes a long time for things to import into Unity, at least in my experience, or at least for my computer. So I'm going to be doing quite a few cuts. I'll show you guys how to import. I'll show you what the menus look like for whenever things like are mid-import and what you need to click, things like that. I'm not going to make us sit here and wait for each time. So I'll show like one thing of importing and show you guys how that looks while it's importing, and then I'm gonna go ahead and cut to after I get everything else imported, because that's a solid hour or so worth of waiting for things to import. So I just want to throw that out there. I'll show you guys how to do the first thing, and then you can kind of import whatever you need from there on your own, and I'm gonna do the same thing, just that way we're not having to wait forever. So as we had talked about last time on our, whenever it comes to importing some of the tools like VRC Fury or Pumpkins or Gesture Manager, a lot of these things can be imported directly through Creator Companion. And I pulled up some of these places' websites. A lot of them are on GitHub. SPS and VRC Fury are on Gumroad. Their websites will have an individual link that you can click on, and it will say like, oh, download it to Creator Companion, click here. And you'll click that, and it'll pop up, and it'll open your Creator Companion, and it'll say like, do you want to import this repository? And you'll click yes and go on from there. You don't have to import things from Creator Companion like this, but it is optimal and it is preferred, since basically what that's saying is that the creator of these tools can pretty much do an auto update. As you can see here, like VRC Fury has a new version available, so I don't have to re-download and reinstall and keep up with a ton of different versions. I can just have the updated version straight through Creator Companion, and if you ever need to go back on an older version they have all the previous versions here in Creator Companion as well, which is very important because, like, especially with VRC Fury, some avatars might need to run on an older version, just like the SDK that we had talked about before. So I definitely recommend installing what you can through Creator Companion. And as you can see, I've gone ahead and imported my Gesture Manager, Pumpkins, High, VRC Fury, and SPS Configurator. And what I did was just whenever I started up a new project, I just clicked the little plus sign and it added it into my project so that whenever I actually opened the Unity scene, it's all in here. So it's not really anything that we have to look for, but to see that things are imported, you can, put down a little arrow on your packages section here, and here you can see custom or gesture manager, high, etc., etc. But I really don't suggest messing with anything that's under this packages section, is that is stuff that's like hard integrated into Unity. Like I said, like it's already been installed through Creator Companion, and I just feel like messing with things that are under here can get kind of messy. So if you do need to uninstall something for any reason or change versions, I highly recommend opening up your Creator Companion. You can hit the minus sign to remove it, or like I said before, you can just click the little down arrow and you can change it to an older version if that's something that you need to do. So that being said, let's go ahead and import our first tool that is not a part of Creator Companion. I actually think that they do. I think Poyomi Tunes has added it to be integrated into Creator Companion. I just don't have it installed yet, so I'm going to use that as kind of a way to show you guys how to import something that maybe isn't available in Creator Companion or you've downloaded manually. So as we had talked about in the last video, Poyomi Tune is one of the most popular shaders. I am using this version. It's 7.3.5 up to 9.0.54. I think they have some newer versions out, but this is really helpful in my opinion because it gives me the latest version of Poyomi Tune, at least that I have downloaded, which is the 9.0.5. But if for some reason I need to go back, or if any of my customers want to go back to a different version of Poyomi, maybe they prefer to do some edits on a different version, then they have that already installed. I will say it's very, very important to kind of be aware, I guess, of what version of Poyomi Tune that you're using, because a lot of times I'll have customers that maybe they'll be wanting to edit one of my packages, but if they import, like let's say Poyomi Tune 8, and I created it with Poyomi 9, then that means that the avatar, there's a very solid chance that things are going to look different or maybe not even function right with the avatar since they changed the shader version. And a lot of people don't realize that the shader is actually very important, especially with avatars that have like dissolve toggles. If you change a shader version, since the shader versions maybe are set up a little bit different or have things in different locations, it might not work properly. So do be very aware of what version you're using and make sure that if you're selling your avatar commercially that you notate that to your customers so that they can use the exact version that you're using. And then from there, of course, like I said, if they want to go down and use like a different version for their own edits or something, they're welcome to do that. And I like using this so that the people that prefer to maybe use a different version already have it, but that way they also have the most up-to-date version that I am creating my avatar with. So I'm just going to drag it from my folders down here into this empty section of Unity, which is under the assets section. And as you can see, it starts loading. It's going to take a hot minute, so I am going to fast forward to whenever the next menu pops up. If yours takes longer or slower, don't worry. Unity is just kind of one of those that sometimes it seems like it takes a while for some things to import, while other things import really quickly. But for anything that you ever need to import, that's how you can do it. So I went ahead and closed out my Windows Explorer, like File Explorer thing, so that you guys can see. So it's going to pop up this preparing package. It's going to take however long it's going to take. Like I said, some things import really quickly. Some things seem to take a long time. While this is working on importing Poyomi, I just kind of want to say, since I am going to fast forward through a lot of this so that you guys don't have to wait for all the things to import with me, this rule of importing goes for everything. So for our avatars, FBX, for our materials, for, like I said, Poyomi shaders or any extra matte caps you have, or any other tools, or if you've bought like, there's like follower packages out there that are available as a Unity package, or maybe you bought an asset and the creator gave you a Unity package with the materials already set up for anything and everything that you need to import into Unity. That's all you need to do is just pull it up into your File Explorer and drag and drop it into this empty assets section here in Unity. And it popped up on the other screen. But what it's going to do is it's going to pull up this thing. It's going to say import Unity package. And it's going to show you, all the different folders and subfolders and scripts and all the crazy stuff that is included with whatever you're trying to import. I would not recommend unchecking anything, especially if you are new to avatar creating. I would leave everything checked. The only time that you ever need to be considering unchecking stuff is if maybe you're doing like a commission for somebody else. Like I have a friend that I'll commission to do Unity work on my avatars, and maybe he's already imported Poyomi shaders and I had it included in the package I gave him. Then he'll need to uncheck it so that it doesn't like cause conflicting issues. So it's really just kind of like if you're further down the line and you're pretty comfortable with Unity and you know for a fact that that's something you need to uncheck, go ahead. But other than that, I would highly recommend just leaving everything as is. Don't uncheck anything. You don't even have to like minimize or expand anything. You can just hit straight to import and it'll do the second half of importing. Like I said earlier, if you ever notice that the first little importing thing like this, if this ever goes away and you're able to click around freely in Unity again and you're not seeing that like import package pop-up window that just happened, might want to minimize Unity, or if you have multiple monitors, go check on another monitor, minimize stuff on that monitor, because sometimes it does pop up on a different monitor depending on which monitor was last running Unity. So before I made this tutorial video, I had Unity up on my other monitor, so that's why it popped up over there. So if you ever see that, just kind of check around on your computer. It's somewhere. And like I said, you might just need to minimize Unity. It might be hiding behind it for some reason. But for anything that you need to import, just drag and drop it into assets. It'll do the first little like loading thing, and then it'll pop up that little pop-up window. You'll just click import, and then it'll sit here and do it all over again. And then it's a rinse and repeat. So I am going to go ahead and let this import real quick, and I'm going to cut to whenever it's finished. And there's a few more things we're going to talk about, and then I'm going to finish importing everything else. And we'll pick up from there. So I'll be right back. Okay, so Poyomi has finally finished importing. You can see it here in our assets section. Something that I wanted to cover before I go through and import everything else is two very important things. One is saving the scene, and two is how to kind of organize your Unity project a little bit so that it's a little bit cleaner and easier to navigate while you're importing stuff. I find that this helps me tremendously whenever I'm importing things like my textures before I start setting up my materials. So first things first is, if you notice up here, this says untitled. This symbol right here is a Unity scene symbol. What this is if you've ever bought a model before, you'll see a little like Unity icon down here, and it normally says something like open me, or the name of the avatar that you bought, or click here, something like that. That is the Unity scene. The Unity scene is this right here. This is an empty scene. There's nothing in it because we haven't imported our model yet. But once we get our model imported, the model will show up here. It'll have all of our textures, fizz bones, etc. On it. This is not only helpful for customers that are buying, your product, to have a scene readily available so that they don't have to basically remake your model for you. It's also very helpful for you if you ever need to come back in, make any edits, or if you're working on it on multiple days. So saving your scene is super duper important. What you can do is come up here, go to File, go to Save As, and it's going to pop up. What this is it's popping up the location that you have your stuff saved. And up here at the top, you can see it's under all these different folders. You can save it wherever, you save your Unity project wherever you need to, but you can't save your scene outside of the Unity project. So if you look up here, you'll see that I have my Scratch avatars, female avatars, 2024 Unity projects, the name of my avatar, and then assets. So what this is that is the Unity project. I named my Unity project right here, Mila tutorial series _ avatar. So that's like if you click here, I'm struggling to figure out how to word this, but like if you click here, you'll see assets, library, logs, da 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 da. That's how you know that this is in the Unity project. And under assets, which is where we just imported our Polyomie shaders, is where I would recommend saving your Unity scene, especially if you're selling commercially. Not only is it the most widely like used spot to save your scene, it's where customers are planning to look. If you are ever planning on selling your model, that's where they tend to look. So I would just recommend saving it under assets. You can save it under a subfolder if you want to make a folder in here, whatever's easiest for you, but I always recommend calling it Open Me. Click save. And now it's popped up down here and it is renamed up here. The reason why I name my scenes Open Me is I do sell my avatars commercially. So whenever a customer buys one of my avatars and they load it into Unity, they'll import the Unity package just like we did with Polyomie. They'll hit import and it'll show up down here and it'll have all the different folders of everything I've done, but then they'll see Open Me. When a customer buys my avatar, it's going to show up like this. They're not going to see anything here. So just to make things easier for people, I save it as Open Me so that all they have to do is click this, come up here and click open, and then it'll pop up with, my avatar and everything in it. Of course, like I said, there's nothing in it right now because our scene is empty, which we're about to work on. So save your scene somewhere that you are comfortable with and something that, a name that you would be able to easily recognize it with. And that's how to save a scene. So moving on, the next thing that I want to talk about before I start importing everything is folders. Making folders in your Unity project, I find, is incredibly helpful. Not only is it helpful for you to easily navigate and know where things are saved, and just kind of, in case you ever need to make edits or do your textures or whatever, it's also very helpful for, like I said, commercially selling avatars for your customers to be able to navigate, because a lot of customers might not know how to make an avatar, but they do know how to edit. So if they want to go through and edit a texture or a material, or maybe they want to add, a new pair of ears, so they want to go edit the animation for the ears on off to add in that. If you have all of your stuff saved in different folders, it's much, much easier for them to be able to go through and navigate and do any edits that they want. It also makes your Unity project look a lot cleaner and it's not so overwhelming, especially if somebody's new to buying avatars. And like I said before, it's just a lot easier for you as you're making your avatar. So what I do is I right click, I go to create and folder. You can organize your stuff however you want. You cannot organize it. You can have one folder, you can have a million folders, whatever's easiest for you. Like I said before, my exact process of how I do things in Unity is not the one and only. It's not like the most optimal. It's not the least optimal. It's just how I do things. So do this if you want, or however many times you want. You don't have to. This is just what I personally do. So I start off with materials. And then in my materials section, I make another folder and I call it textures or PNGs, which I think is what we're going to go with this time. So what this is the materials is once I actually have the avatar in here and I start making the materials for her, those will go under the materials folder. But in the materials folder, I'm going to keep a PNGs folder. And in that folder is where I'm going to import all of her different textures. So if you remember in Blender, we had like the mask and the pants and the hair and blah, 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 blah. We have all these different things. So if I come back to face mask, I can see that Aries made all these different textures, and you don't have to worry about what do I need, what do I not need. You don't have to worry about it right now if you aren't too sure. Just import it all. If you do know exactly which, textures you're wanting to use, you can only import those. It doesn't really matter. But back in Unity, I'm going to make under my PNG section a mask folder. And then I'm going to take all the textures for that mask and drag and drop them into that folder. I find that this is very helpful for me personally for my organizing, because what I can do is I'll go through each individual folder for each asset and I'll make that asset's material. So I'll go through the mask. I have all of the textures in here, so it's a little bit easier for me to navigate when I'm making my materials. I'll make that material and then I'll drag it into the materials folder. And then I'll go back up and I'll jump into the cargo pants folder or the hair folder or the body or whatever. And I'll make each asset's material, put it in the materials folder. That way, if somebody ever wants to edit, they can go into the material section, they can find that immediately, but then even further if they want to edit the actual texture, the actual PNG. So on the mask, as we see here, it has like this little like Ani kind of mouth. If they want to completely do away with that and say they want to add a cat mouth, if they know how to do that, they can easily go and find this and they can start working on editing it from there. So it's not necessary. It's just something that I find very helpful. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to go import all of the different PNGs and textures for all the different assets. I'm going to put them in their own folder, as well as I'm going to import our FBX. So if you remember from, I think it was 1 or 2 videos ago, we had talked about exporting from Blender as an FBX. I personally, what I like to do, again, not necessary, is in my assets section, I'll make a folder and I'll do Mila PC. You don't have to name it this, name it whatever, but that's my avatar's name. Right now this is the PC version. I'm not sure if she's going to have a Quest version, but I commissioned my Quest version, so no, I don't have any tutorials on how to make Quest avatars. I am sorry. I have a general idea of how to do them, but I am not proficient in them at all. So I have a fellow partner creator that I commissioned to do that. So whenever I commission her to make my Quest avatars, I name what I've done under a folder for PC, so then that way whenever she goes through and does her Quest stuff, then she can keep that kind of separate from PC. So I do Mila PC, and here is where is she? Mila. I will import the FBX of the avatar. And then I'm going to be making more folders as we go and as we make stuff, which I can cover that as we go. But like I said, folders aren't really necessary. It's just however you want to organize. So I'm going to go ahead and let this import. And just a little heads up, as you can see, there is our avatar. If you ever get this pop up, it says normal map settings, material is using a texture, it's normal map, fix now or ignore. Just go ahead and click fix now. Basically, what's that saying is a normal map is what gives the assets, I've talked about this before when we were in Blender, but it kind of gives them that more of a 3D textured look instead of a flat textured look. And Unity just basically needs to register it as like not RGB and registered as a normal. So if you don't click fix now on that pop-up, it's perfectly okay. You can close it out, you can hit ignore, whatever. It'll have an auto fix button on the SDK whenever you go to upload your avatar anyway. So regardless, it's going to make you do it. It's just a matter of if you want to do it or not. But if you ever see that pop up, don't worry. So I'm going to go ahead and finish importing everything that I need for this avatar, and then we will move on to what to do with our FBX of our avatar, what to do with all these textures we just imported, and kind of start moving on to the actual setup of the avatar. So I'm just going to fast forward. So if you guys see a bunch of new folders, it's just, like I said, it's going to be a bunch of new folders for the assets textures. It's nothing, no new tools or anything. So I will be right back as soon as all of that is done. Alrighty, so I finally have everything imported into my Unity project. I'm just going to kind of give a brief explanation, brief rundown of what I've done. That way you guys kind of maybe know where I'm at in case you have any questions for any reasons. So like I said, I have my avatars folder here. I went ahead and moved everything under it. I made an empty folder called 3.0. That's what we're going to be using for our toggles and animations and menus, things like that. Our materials with our PNGs, with all the PNGs and textures that I'm going to need there. I also made it a folder called systems where I imported the fake index system by Snow, which is available for free on Gumroad. Something I really like about it is it basically mimics index gestures for people that maybe don't have an index or for desktop users. As well as I imported this animation called check move. It's available on Booth, I believe, and it's basically just like a quick little animation that I'm going to toss onto the avatar once we get her all set up. I definitely recommend downloading this and importing it on your model because in my opinion, it's a really, really helpful way to check for any weight painting or any clipping, especially if you don't have full body or you don't have a way to test yourself in a vrchat. Obviously, it's not going to help you find everything, but it does some pretty basic movements, you know, for something that a full body user might do, or especially for dancers. So it's just something that I like to have on my model so I can check it. and then go back into Blender and fix anything that I need to. And then of course I test my avatars in game, and I have some friends that are dancers that test for me, and I'll fix any more clipping from there. But that's just something I just kind of wanted to point out just in case it's helpful for anyone else. But other than that, yeah, I haven't done anything else, just imported a gazillion and 20 million textures. I also wanted to toss this out there. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I don't remember where I got this. I think I downloaded this in Poyomi's server. I don't think it was in the MatCaps channel. I don't remember what channel it was, but I think I either got it from there or a friend gave it to me. I don't remember, but this is what we call a cube map. I'm in a server with a bunch of other creators that they'll share different cube maps and like MatCaps and stuff that we found that's obviously allowed to be shared. But this is a cube map. It's right now a 2D texture, but what we can do is we click on it and we change it to cube and we hit apply. This is going to turn it into a cube map, and what this does is this lets me put it onto my metals, and this is what makes the metals really, really shiny in game. Obviously, I know it can get too shiny sometimes, so totally up to you on if you want to use this or not, or if you want to use your own metal settings. I prefer this just because I like the shiny, I like the bloom. So I just wanted to toss that out there. That's what that is. I believe, like I said, you can find stuff like this in Poyomi shaders server. I believe there are some available on Gumroad or Jinxie, but this is one that I've had for a very, very long time. I don't remember if I got this from another creator or from Poyomi Shader, so I'm so sorry I can't link directly where this one's from, but there's tons out there, and that is how you get your metal to be shiny. So that being said, we can actually get started finally on our avatar. And by the way, as I go, I'm already remembering things that I forgot to import, so if I pause at any point to go and import something, then I deeply apologize. I'll probably just cut it out, so that way we don't have to kind of interrupt the tutorial series. I just wanted to toss that out there just in case you see any word cuts, and it's probably me remembering that I forgot to import something. So onto our model. If you click on your model, it's going to pop over here on this little window called the inspector. This is going to be your friend. The inspector is where we're going to be doing most everything between the inspector and the hierarchy. If you don't see these, you can go up to, I think it's edit. Is it edit? Hold on. I'm going to find this for you guys. Oh, window. You can go up to window, and you can add, whatever you need to from here into panels. You can add your animation tab if you don't have that down here. But primarily what you're going to need is the hierarchy, inspector, and then animation. These should all show up already by default in Unity, but in case they don't, just go up to the windows and add them from there. So anyways, click on your model. In your inspector tab over here on the my Unity is set up for the right side. Yours might be on the right side. You can drag these and snap them or move them to wherever you want them to be. If you prefer to maybe have it, I don't know, like organized a different way, you can do that. So anyways, we're going to, I'm going to fix this again because I messed it all up. We're going to click on our model, and right where it says rig, we're going to click from generic to humanoid and click apply. You don't need to change anything else. You need to leave it exactly as it is. There's one other button that we're going to click on this page here in just a second under model, but we're changing it to humanoid, and I definitely recommend doing this first and foremost before doing anything else. You can go ahead and import your stuff, obviously, but before you change anything else, or especially before you drag the model into your scene or into your hierarchy, I recommend changing your avatar to humanoid. And this is just gonna sound kind of weird, but it's one of those weird Unity bugs that occasionally does happen, that I would drag in my model and then change it to humanoid, and later on down the road it would not register my model as humanoid. It obviously doesn't happen all the time, and Unity has so many bugs that there's no way that we could ever potentially know all of them or know how to avoid all of them. And new ones are happening every day. Some of them are super old, some of them are new. It's just kind of one of those bugs that I know is fairly common, that I've run into a lot and had quite a lot of friends run into as well. So it's one way that I know to help avoid it is to go ahead and set up your humanoid before you do anything else. I don't know why. And if you've already dragged in your model and then changed it to humanoid, you're fine. It most likely won't happen. But if you do notice that you finish your avatar, you got it on the SDK, you go to upload it, and it says that it's not humanoid. That's one thing that I would check or try. Is maybe making a new Unity project and throwing in your FBX, changing it first, and then dragging it into your hierarchy. See if you still get the same error. Getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but just kind of an explanation onto why I definitely wanted to stress to click your model, change it to humanoid before we do anything else, just because it does occasionally happen to be a bug that if you do that later after like maybe making toggles or adding your materials to your model, that it might not register it as humanoid for whatever reason. So I'm going to come into the model section real quick, and I'm going to minimize this. Let's see, where is it? Right here where it says Legacy Blend Shapes Normals. I'm going to check mark this and hit apply. This is not absolutely necessary. From what I've seen, if you don't do this, your model will be fine in game. But I've noticed sometimes before that whenever I'm adding my facial expressions, it will kind of like almost make the like mouth corners look bent inwards funny, even though they're not. It's really something I can't really show unless it directly happens or once we get our materials on. I like to go ahead and click it on ahead of time, just so that I don't run into that problem later, but it's something just to kind of help it avoid looking funny in Unity. Like I said, I've never really noticed it necessarily doing that in game, but if you're like me, and like I said, it's like the same concept of adding your materials in Blender. It's just if you want things to look fully how they're going to as you're working, then that's something I would suggest checkmarking. Whether you checkmark that or not, go back to your rig tab, and right where it says humanoid and then avatar definition, you're going to click configure. Give it a second, and it's going to open up this screen, and it's going to show your model with all the bones. Now, if you remember in Blender, I had talked about that you need to clear all transforms, and if you don't, you're going to see a giant triangle. This is that page. So whenever you click configure, if you see a giant triangle, like in between their legs going down to the floor, or from their head going down to the floor, anything that does not follow a normal T-pose looking avatar, like obviously this is registering the bones coming off of her leg for the pants, and it's registering the strings on the tennis shoes and all this kind of stuff, like that's fine. But if you see anything that looks like really weird, or you have, like I said, a big triangle somewhere, jump back into Blender and make sure to show all of your assets. Click A to select all, and then Control A and clear all your transforms. Because basically what that is it's saying that something does not have its origin set properly to the world center. So it's basically like for the jacket, maybe the origin is here in the middle of the chest, when everything needs to be set to the world origin for it to work properly in vrchat. So most newer bases, I think, are already, I don't know, like set up properly, I guess. But sometimes it's not. So I definitely recommend coming in here. One of the things that I'm kind of talking about is like right here, it says toes, middle toe. You don't necessarily have to map your toes. I know some creators prefer not to. I don't really personally know or understand the difference on why we would or wouldn't. This base has the toes actually rigged, which is very interesting. This is Zimpia's e-girl base, but some creators won't have the individual toe bones. They'll just have like foot, and then it'll say like toe, and you can put it in there. But since this one doesn't, I'm just going to click this little circle and go none. And I'm going to do that for both, just because that's trying to look for like the toes in general, and then it would read individual from there. But since there's not one in general, it's just individual toe bones, then I don't want anything on there. And like I said, it's not necessary on if it's going to affect full body or not. So I would just triple check your armature and your rig over here. So hips is hips, spine, chest, da 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 da. Go down the list to make sure that everything is set up correctly. Like I said, majority of the time it auto maps it appropriately for you, but if it ever doesn't, then you'll want to check that, because if any of these are wrong, it'll show up in red here most of the time, and then if you get in VR, and especially if you're in full body or even in desktop mode, your avatar could start collapsing into the floor and stuff because it can't read the humanoid rig properly. One of the biggest things that happens on this page is you need to go to head and then jaw. We don't need a jawbone. Unity is built for so much more than just vrchat, so they have jawbones for like normal video games like The Witcher or Dragon Age or something like that, right? So that their character's mouth moves. We on vrchat use Visemes, which is something that the heads will already come with whenever you've built your avatar, so you don't have to worry about that. But that basically means that we don't need a jawbone. So same thing, you're going to click that little circle, you're going to come all the way up and hit none, and make sure that the jawbone is set to none. A lot of the times it auto sets to the nose or cheeks or hair bones, and you don't want any of that. You definitely want it to say none. If you do have anything in the jawbone section, basically whenever you go to talk, your avatar's mouth will not move in game, or it will move at times whenever it's not supposed to, like whenever the hair is moving. So make sure that if you ever have any of those issues, that you come and triple check that your jawbone has none on it. You're going to hit apply. Once you're done with all of these settings, it's going to load, and then once this finishes loading, we're going to hit done. Alright, so now we have our avatar set up to humanoid, and can't say it enough, highly recommend doing that before we do anything else on our avatar, just because it can eventually cause glitches later. It doesn't always happen, but it does happen on occasion. These are all like errors that are printed to the console, so a lot of times if you've ever bought an avatar before and you're having issues with it, creator will ask you to send me a screenshot of all the errors. This is what they mean. So here's our project. Go to console, and these are fine. This is just Unity like doing its coding stuff, but any of these yellow triangles are technically errors, but they're not errors that are going to stop our avatar from functioning or uploading to vrchat. If you ever see anything in red, then that means that there is something that will stop it from uploading to vrchat. These things are just like, oh, mesh ponytail has 6 out of vertices with no weight or bone, so it removed it. So I'm just going to click clear because that's all that those are. It's basically saying that there's a random vertice. It happens on occasion when you're making assets, that there's just a random floating vertice that's like not attached to anything. And so that's just Unity basically saying like, hey, that's there. I'm going to remove it whenever you go to upload it if you don't want to fix it. So I just hit clear so that that's off of my little bar down here because I'm OCD like that. So, but if you, like I said, if you ever see anything like that, or like this, it's fine. If it's red, that's something you'll want to address. So now that our model is set up and our console is clear, we're going to drag our model. You can drag it into the scene. I don't recommend doing this because if you notice, like, this is a lot like Blender. This is a grid. So it has different locations, has different scaling. It is obviously 3D, so it could be up, down, whatever. I recommend dragging it into the hierarchy. What that's going to do is, if you see over here, the position is at 0. So this is putting it into the world origin. Versus if I drag and put it over here, it's not at the middle of our Unity scene and it's like floating above versus below. Like it can get kind of weird. So I definitely recommend dragging it into the hierarchy because you want your avatar to be at 0, 0. If you do this, that's fine. Just please go through and make sure to zero out everything. Because if your avatar is not at the origin of Unity at the 0, 0, 0 location, it won't work properly. So now we have our avatar here. She's beautiful. She's great. Sometimes it will like kind of understand, like it's kind of comprehending that this is where some of those textures are supposed to be. It has to do with like the naming of the textures and the materials in Blender versus what the textures are actually called in like Unity. Like if you renamed it versus like these. I don't know. It's kind of weird to explain. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. If your avatar is showing up like solid gray or solid black or something, like it's perfectly fine. It's normal. There's no materials attached to it. If it shows up like this, cool. It still means that there's no materials attached to it. So now we can go through and actually start working on the materials for our avatar, which is going to be the last thing that we are going to cover in this tutorial video, because I feel like me personally, I like to have all of my materials set up before I do anything else. One, because I like having dissolve toggles. So basically that means that if I go to toggle off the jacket, instead of just a boop boop, it will dissolve and be all pretty. You have to have your materials set up and assigned to all of your assets before you can set up dissolve toggles, because dissolve runs off of Poyomi shader. Obviously, if you're not using Poyomi, you most likely won't be able to do dissolve, so disregard that if you're not using Poi, or if you don't want to do dissolves. I personally like to set up my materials so I can see how my avatar looks. It also, in my opinion, helps a lot with clipping whenever we go to do the check move animation. If I have the materials set up that way, I can see exactly like, oh, there's skin clipping through the pants. Like it's just easier to see. And then of course, like I said, it's easier for whenever you go to set up your toggles. So that's what we're going to cover for the last thing in this video, is setting up our materials. Now, I do want to give a little heads up. I like to get detailed on my materials. So I will do a very quick, the bare minimum of how to set up materials, and then I'm going to go into the extra stuff that I like to do. If you don't really care about that extra stuff, or if you want to just play around with it on your own, which I definitely highly recommend, because there's so much that you can do with Poyomi. I haven't even begun to scratch the surface of what all you can do with Poyomi myself. So I definitely recommend going through and playing with it, finding your own settings, finding which different parts of Poyomi that you like and which ones you don't. I will separate these into different parts on the timeline of this video so that you can fast forward if you don't really care. But that will be the last thing, and then in the next video we'll start on the fizz bones and the toggles and all that kind of stuff. So before we do that, this is just, again, a little OCD thing that I like to do. I'm going to come over here, I right-clicked, prefab, and I'm going to unpack. This basically means that I can move stuff around. Do be very, very careful if you are unpacking your prefab, because if you come into armature, you now can rearrange stuff in your armature, which I do not recommend doing. And if you do that, that can cause not only issues for your avatar functioning, but if you end up needing to go back into Blender and updating your FBX, it's going to break. Absolutely going to break if you rearrange your armature in Unity versus what it is in Blender. So please be very careful with that. Please don't rearrange anything in your armature if you don't have to. If you do, please go into Blender and update it there. So I prefer coming in here, and I like to create an empty, and I'm just going to give this some dashes for now. I like to go find like pretty little like text dividers and stuff, and I like to drag these just to kind of organize, I guess is the best way to put it, my avatar, and like I'll go through and make them like all the same thing, but I'll do like accessories, the base, bottoms. Like, I'll just go through and do this. I don't, again, not necessary whatsoever. It's just something that I've found makes it a little bit easier for me to kind of look at whenever I'm making my toggles, as well as my own customer base has said that they like it this way because it's a little bit easier for them to look at whenever they want to go make any edits as well. Again, super not necessary, just something that I am going to do real quick, just because it's a habit. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I've gone through and made my dividers all pretty. Again, not necessary, just something I like to do. So let's go ahead and jump straight into making our materials. Something I like to do personally is I'll go through and hide. So I'll just uncheck mark. And yes, I know her hair is funny. That's because, remember, we have blend shapes on for that. So I'll personally go through and, oh, I didn't import, hold on. Okay, sorry, I thought I forgot to import something for the baby's hairs, but I did not. So I'll just go through and, like, I don't know, I prefer to kind of hide everything except for, like, maybe, like, her default. So if I do, where is her? There we go. So I don't know, it's just, I don't know, it's preference. You can do however you want to do. You can leave it all on, you can hide certain things, whatever. This isn't maybe necessarily what her default state is going to be. I just like to hide all the extra stuff so I can kind of focus on one thing at a time. Again, not necessary at all. But we're going to start making our materials. So like I said, I'm going to do just a very, very quick simplified version of one or two materials, and then I'm going to go through and show you guys the special things that I like to do to make my materials look extra pretty. Again, not necessary. You don't have to use these exact sections of the shader. You don't have to use these exact settings, anything like that. Play around with it. I can't recommend that enough, because I think something that really sets apart different creators is not only their, I guess, like, fashion sense and what assets they use and how they sculpt it and the combos that they use, etc., but also their material setups, because I've seen some creators do crazy stuff like crazy emissions or dissolves, and there's all kinds of stuff you can do that I think really help your model stand out, and kind of give it your own type of like signature. So I definitely recommend playing around with the materials, but like I said, I'll show you guys what I personally do, and then you can kind of play from there. So to make a material, you're going to right click, create material, and name it whatever you want. I would suggest naming it something that's going to be easy to find. So I named this one head. You're going to come up here to where it says shader standard, and you're going to click on Poyomi and Poyomi Tune. Obviously, you saw where it said old versions, and like I said earlier, this is a version of Poyomi that ranges from like 7 point something all the way up to 9 point something. So if you or any of the other customers wanted to use a different version, they can. But if you just click Poyomi Tune, it's going to use the newest version that is on the version that I imported. Something very important is you're going to want to change this rendering preset from opaque to cutout. Now, something very important is like for our eyelashes, for example, or our hair, anything that has an alpha map, you'll want to change to trans clipping, fade, or transparent. You can also leave it on cutout, and under the shading tab, or the colors normals tab is these alpha options. When it comes to setting up alpha, that is really, honestly, anything that comes to materials is a preference choice, but I would say especially whenever it comes to alpha is a huge preference choice, because like the fade or the transparent look cool, but it can show up kind of funny in mirrors sometimes, or it might like do something called backface culling where it's gonna like not show up properly, like it might show up in front of the hair when it's actually behind the hair, etc. You can leave it in cutout and play with the alpha options. It's just not going to be as like smooth as it is in Blender. So if we go back to our Blender, you can see how it's kind of like, it's smoother here, right? And this was the alpha hashed, if you guys remember. So if we come through and change this to like alpha clip, like that's what it would look like in Unity if you left it to cutout. So it's kind of the same thing like I had talked about in Blender. It's really up to you guys on how y'all prefer. I did just want to toss that out there. So that way you guys kind of know that there's not really a set way to set up alpha textures. And it's very, very much up to you on what you do. And it is perfectly okay if you have multiple materials that have different rendering presets. The only time that you really need to be concerned about your materials being different versions is different shader versions. So if you have some materials that are Poyomi 9 and some that are Poyomi 7, that potentially could cause issues later because it is trying to load two different versions of the same shader technically. So try to stick on one version if you can. But as far as rendering presets, you can have them all kinds of different ones and you'll be fine. Something I forgot to mention, I probably should have mentioned, obviously this is middle mouse wheel. If you hold your right mouse or your right button, that lets you kind of like look around, and then holding middle mouse lets you pan like this. So I apologize, I meant to do it at the start of this video. I am deeply sorry. So, okay, we have our material. The reason you want everything set to cut out is if you are doing dissolves. So if you do any dissolve animations, it won't work unless it is set to cut out. So by habit, I set everything of mine to cut out because I do dissolve animations. If you don't worry about it. The other thing that's very important is this rendering tab down here at the bottom where it says cull and back. Let me see if I can find, because that's 2D hair. Okay, so you guys can kind of see it here on like this strap. Obviously, we know that it has a back, but that back is like invisible right now. What that is in Blender, it's something called faces and normals, terms you don't really have to worry about right now, but that's what that is this is a blue-sided face and this is a red-sided face. The red-sided face means that if, like for Quest users, I guess is a really good way to put it. Quest users won't be able to see that back of this buckle because the face is the opposite. I guess is the best way to explain it. It's kind of hard to explain, but basically for like Quest models, whenever somebody goes to make a Quest model, they want to make all the faces facing the same way if they can. So that's why like 2D hair and alphas are really difficult for Quest because it's only one-sided. So that means that there is going to be two opposite faces, which means that if they flip it around like this, they're not going to be able to see it. For PC users, it's not obviously super important since we can see both sides, but to make that happen is through Poyomi, through this rendering tab, and you have to change it from back to off. Basically, once we change it to off, what that means is whenever we put our material, we'll just let it load in. But once we put our material on the object, it's going to render both sides of that asset instead of only trying to focus on one side that has the faces facing the whatever direction. So obviously that's not the material for the pants, so we're not going to worry about it. But it's just really good practice and a good habit to go through on all your materials and make sure that the rendering coal is set to off. I had quite a few people ask in my Discord server about like, oh, why is only 1/2 of my asset showing? That is the most common reason. But like I said, for Quest users, that's not going to be an option. So if you are trying to work with a Quest model, then you'll need to go into Blender and flip your faces. But that is getting really, really far ahead of this tutorial, so we're not going to worry about it too much right now. But yeah, for PC side, that's what you want to do. So those are the two things that I recommend starting off with every single material, setting it to cutout and setting it to the rendering being off. So now we can go ahead and actually start putting our material together. And like I said before, I had imported my textures. I call them PNGs. They're the same thing. And this is under the color and normal section where it says texture. That's going to be the base texture, I guess, of your material. So I'm going to drag in her head material and it pops up down here. And then if I drag and put this onto the head, now it shows up. Ta-da! It's all pretty and like lit up and shaded properly and what it's supposed to do. And it looks weird from the rest of it, but it's fine. That's pretty much it. When it comes to the basics of setting up materials, you just want to go through and add in your texture. You can add in the normals, the alphas. You can add in all the different maps. If you are wanting to learn like, which I'm going to cover this, the like metallic, there's the opacity, which is your alpha, the normal, and the roughness. I'm going to do my best to remember to link the video in the description of this one, but there's another creator named Crapman, and he has a wonderful, wonderful tutorial up of how to set up these textures in Unity. I forget what it's called, but it's to like how to like properly set up like the full textures, like with the roughness and the metallic and the all that kind of stuff. And it does help give your materials a more stylized look. I prefer to do that through other methods, which is something that I'm going to cover here in just a few minutes. But if you want to know how to like do like the AO map and all this kind of different stuff, then that's something that I'll link down below. But for now, just to kind of cover the basics of it, you can drag in your texture, you can drag in your alpha map, and you can drag it on, and you're good to go. You don't really have to do anything else. But let me find... let's do the bikini, so I guess I can show you guys that way. Let's do material, bikini. And I'm going to drag this on to the bikini. I'm going to hide her hair real quick so that we can actually see. Oh no, that's the harness. No. Okay. To the bikini. So on the bikini, standard Poyomi, tune, changing it to cutout and off. You can also Control D to duplicate if that's easier for you. So I have bikini base. This is going to be kind of like a middle section, I guess, from going from like the normal setup and the like basics to setting up all the fancy stuff. But as we were talking about the different maps, if we like extend down this shading tabs, and if we go to cube map, I'm going to check mark this on. And if you remember earlier, I had mentioned that I made a cube map. You can use cube maps for this. You can use mat caps. You can do whatever you want to. But I made myself a cube map earlier, so I'm going to click that in there. But it makes the whole thing now metal, which is not what we want. So that's where things like these different maps can come into hand. Really good helpfulness. Basically, is if you extend down to where it says masking, and then it says mask, you can import the metallic map. We drag that, drop it right there. You can see it changed it to not everything, but some parts. Now, my only issue is that it's not quite the parts that I want it to be. So if we click fix now, still didn't quite do it. That's okay. We can extend this down and click invert. Now it's doing like the opposites of what I want. This is not a good example at all. But I just kind of wanted to like use this as like an example since the bikini did have a metallic map. When Tilly created this set, she had a different folder called like roughness settings that had a whole bunch of different maps that would be like different metallic maps and different roughness maps and different things like that, so that you could have more of like an armor look or a leather look or more of a cloth look. So different assets are going to have it different ways. If it's not something that you find is working for you at all, you don't even have to use any of this. So if I do reset and delete it all, you can always go back into Blender if you're struggling with that. Just know that more material slots obviously means that your avatar is going to be a little bit more unoptimized, not like extremely, but if you have a gazillion different, you know, material slots, it's obviously gonna do a difference. But you can go through and in edit mode use that L button, and you can highlight the different parts that you want, and then just click the plus sign and add, and then assign. So now that won't be a part of the, you know, actual textures, but then we can make a separate material and we can come in here and then we can set up our material and it would be for all of those different little parts. Like I said, not the best example. I just kind of picked out the bikini because I knew it was something that had a metal map, but that's a way that you can utilize some of these different maps. The normal map is something that I use all the time. And just to kind of show you guys, so if I turn on the normal map, obviously nothing changed, but if I add a matte cap to it, I'll let it load and I'll kind of show you guys the difference. This is how you can get your materials to have like I said, like a little bit more of like a 3D texture. I don't think I imported it. So I'll just add a normal default. Let's do one like this just to kind of show you guys. So if I come back up here and I remove that normal map, see right here how it's like very flat? Oh my gosh, I didn't mean to do that. I'm so sorry. So see how it's like really, really flat? This matte cap, it's cool, it's great, it's whatever. I can, you know, using the maps basically and the masks is basically telling it to only apply to the specific part of a texture. So like this is the emission, so it's only going to highlight where she created the emission spot, right? So you can use masks and maps, you can not, it's totally up to you. But just for the sake of this example, I'm going to have it show the whole thing. But matte caps are a great way to get it to add kind of a little extra texture, and if you see it kind of like you move around, the lighting gets a little different. It's a lot of fun. It does not beat actual like lighting systems, so I definitely recommend, like I said, like playing around with the shaders to kind of figure out what you like best. But matte caps are a really cool way to set up like little details like that. And the normal maps are what helps it give that 3D texture. So it's flat now, but if we add the normal map, see now it has a little bit of that like more leather texture and all the screws started showing up. Normal maps are a great way for your clothing to stay low poly and more optimized while having the details of like a 3D thing. So obviously this is a super duper low poly strap, but now we have all those little tiny details showing up like as if it was real leather, and that's thanks to the normal map. So yeah, super duper simple kind of way of doing like a quick little rundown. I highly recommend, can't say it enough, playing through with what you want. You don't have to use all of the different maps. You don't have to use any of them at all. You don't have to use matte caps, cube maps, rim lighting. You don't have to do any of it. You can just throw on the texture like we did for her face and move on if that's what you prefer to do. So that being said, I would call that, I guess, kind of the end of the basics of setting up a material and where the different maps go. So now I'm going to like section it off into how I actually like to set up my materials, just to show you guys like properly and fully and in detail how I like to set up and utilize matte caps, normals, alphas, and emissions, and rim lighting. I think that's everything. So if you aren't like really wanting the details of how to make your materials look pretty, don't worry about it. You can skip on and wrap up this video. If you want to know how to do that, then that's what this next section is going to be. Okay, so moving on to how I personally set up my materials. I think I'm going to kind of fast forward just a little bit, and I'm going to put on the basic materials for her hair, body, and clothing. I'm not going to set anything fancy up, just like I did for the head and the bikini, just throwing on the like base texture so that way you guys can kind of see it. And then I can kind of show you guys how I set them up to go from that like flat basic texture to how I personally prefer them to be fully set up. So I'm just going to kind of fast forward that a little bit so that we can move on from there. Okay, so I have added on just the base material, the base texture for all of her different textures and her assets. So now I'm going to start going through and just kind of showing you guys how we can take it from looking kind of flat like this to looking more how my avatars already look with all the emissions and the pretty lighting. So, oh, I forgot a spot. Give me just a second. Materials, metal. Okay. So I've said it a million times, but there's all kinds of stuff that you can do with Poyomi. This is just how I do it in some of the sections that I personally like to play around with the most. For the sake of this tutorial series, I'm going to kind of start like this, just that way we can see a little bit better. And I know it's going to look funny, but I'm going to take off her hair for now. So I'm going to start with the lashes since those have alpha, and then I had the body showing a little bit more because I want to show you guys some cool little things that you can do to make the body look a lot more realistic and 3D in a prettier way than it is right now. So with the lashes though, I'm going to go ahead and start there. So for this head, this is Nessie's head. It's just the same alpha map that the hair uses. This doesn't have a texture. It's just flat. You know, you can color it, you know, whatever you want to. I prefer it to just stay black, so that's what we're going to do. I think technically with her head, you can put on the material and it'll kind of have that same fade that her liner does, but I'm just going to leave it like this. So this is what I was talking about with, you know, kind of like in Blender, you can leave it to, you know, the normal cutout, and you can play around with these alpha options, and it'll be a little bit more, I guess, like hardening looking. If you want to leave it on cutout, I suggest going to alpha options, turning on dithering, and you can play around with these here. I prefer that down and dithering gradient up with basis down. Basis, as you can see, if you turn it all the way up, it kind of outlines and adds this like weird, like kind of like pixely, I can't really see it very well, but like pixely kind of shading, and it highlights like the actual shape of the object. So since these are alpha lashes, Nessie made these like planes that look like this, but with the alpha map on them, you know, it's not showing the full thing. So you can kind of play around with this as much as you want to. You can do more or less gradient. This is just what I have found to be the best, at least for cutout. But like I was saying earlier, let me go back so it's a little bit easier. Body lashes. Okay. You can also change it to like fade and make it a lot smoother. You could do like trans clipping or transparent. Like I said though, the lashes, like in my opinion, doesn't really matter because it's just the head behind them. But let me see if I can kind of get it to show. I don't know if you guys can really like see the difference, but see like right here how you can see the grid lines on fade versus on transparent versus on trans clipping. Like you can't really see it. That's kind of what I mean when I said on like bigger things. So if you had like a skirt that was transparent and you changed it to one of those other ones, you might be able to see the grid through it. I would kind of play around with those and play around with the alpha options. You can do alpha mod, which if I can zoom in a little bit more, kind of the same thing as the dithering, but like smoother, I guess. I don't know. It's really kind of hard to explain what every little individual thing can do, but I would definitely suggest playing around with it. And you can always go on the SDK instead of build and publish, which is going to like fully go through the vrchat servers and like do all the like behind the scenes uploading. You can do build and test, which basically means only you can see the avatar, nobody else will be able to. And you can go into like a testing world and kind of play around with the different alphas and see which ones you like. especially for like clothing and stuff, because like I said, you might be able to see the body through it, but you'll also be able to see like the back of the skirt through it, but like not how you would imagine it would. I don't really know how to explain it. Just play around with it and just know that the different alpha like rendering presets can show up different, and sometimes it does look a little funny in mirrors, or if you have like, you know, I don't know, like a tail, and it kind of will show like in front of your skirt or something. It's the best way I can think to explain it. So just play around with that. But personally with eyelashes, since it's just the head and there's nothing really else I have to worry about, and I don't really care if they show in front of the hair or not, I personally just leave them on trans clipping, and I keep on dithering. Just, I don't know, I just feel like it makes it look smoother. It's just, I don't know, my opinion. So there's that. Oh, I don't think, oh no, she did have, okay, never mind, ignore me. So moving on, I'm gonna say let's go ahead and do the like body and the skin first. I normally pull up some of my older projects and I just copy and paste over the settings. So I'm gonna go through and show you guys like all the different sections that I use to make my materials look pretty. Just know that by the end of this video versus the start of the next video, the materials might look a little different, because I'm obviously not going to go through and set up all the materials for every single little bitty thing right now, just because that would take a long time on the video, and I wanted this revamped series to be not real time, so that I can just kind of get out the teachings part and then you guys can play with it. So I will be going through after I finish recording this and like tweaking the materials and everything to be exactly how I want them to be. So if they look different, just please understand that's why. But these are the sections that I'm going to be playing with. So I talked about matte caps. One of the things that I recommend is Panda Bear, who some of you guys might know of. He has the Panda base, which a lot of people start from. On his Gumroad, he has these skin caps by Panda Bear. And he has all these different skin matte caps. I swear by matte caps. I absolutely love using matte caps. I think they're a great way to give like a little extra shine and shade without going through and like really setting up all the real-time lighting. Obviously, real-time lighting is going to look much, much better on your avatar, but if you're not familiar with any of that, I think matte caps are a great way for beginners to be able to start kind of adding some of that elements, and it's just something I've always really enjoyed. So I personally, on my skin textures, I will add my matte cap. You can change the intensity on any of these things, obviously to be, you know, less bright, more bright, whatever. Emission strength, I would be very cautious with using emission strength. You can turn off the Unity lighting here, but as I mentioned on a previous tutorial, I don't really recommend by going off of these lighting settings. Once you get all your materials done, I would recommend going to Window and High and Lightbox Viewer. I'm not going to click it right now because it's going to take a minute to load up. But I would suggest that because it's going to show a panel of different, kind of like this, if you can see down here, like it's going to be like 6 different little windows of different lightings that are most common in VRChat worlds. And I would suggest using that to kind of gauge your materials on if things need to be brighter or darker, and especially with emissions, because countless times I think we'll think, oh, just the tiniest little bit of emission will look great, but it's actually a lot brighter than you would anticipate, or it's not bright enough, or if you're going into a completely dark world, your avatar is going to be showing because you have some kind of emission strength. Even if it's just 0.01, it's going to be showing up, and you might not want that. You might want your avatar to match the world lighting a bit more. So just be cautious with emission strength. Base color mix, obviously, this is just the matte cap on the head. This is trying to mix it in with the texture below, so totally up to you on if you want to use that or not. And then normal strength, if you have a normal map, obviously, like I showed earlier with the bikini, it's going to show the normals. Masking is kind of, just the same thing that we talked about earlier. So if I come in here, she has this like white teeth mask. So I'm going to toss that on here. So basically what that's going to do is, right now I have to invert it, but it's highlighting the teeth and the back of the eyes. So if I do, fix now, if I do invert, it's going to apply this matte cap to all of her face except for the back of the eyes and for her, and her teeth, which is exactly what I want. I don't want it to affect those, so that way she doesn't like randomly have brown teeth. Blending is where I think you're going to do the most playing around. Obviously, replace, kind of self-explanatory. Multiply, think of it as kind of like a darkening overlay. Add is like a brighter overlay. Mixed, of course. Screen, and unlit add. So I don't really do replace. I personally do a little bit of add, just a tiny hair of replace. And that's pretty much it. You can't really see the difference right now. It's one of those, I don't know how to explain it. I've just noticed that before I started using matte caps for my body versus after, like stacked with all the other stuff that I do, I feel like it makes a difference. Even if it's a very, very slight difference, it's still, in my opinion, just that slight difference, you know, I think makes it look nicer. I don't really know how to explain it. So I add matte caps. You can obviously make it more prominent if you want to, especially for like the darker skin tones, which I'll cover that stuff here in a minute. So I add matte caps. All I did is I clicked on these 3 dots and clicked copy. I went to my body material and clicked paste, and I just removed that mask since I don't want that mask affecting the body at all. And I definitely would recommend doing that for everything, for anything that you're doing. So for things that need to match, like the head and the body. So if I add a matte cap on one or rim lighting on one, I'm going to want it to be on the other one as well, so that they look as seamless as possible and that they're not like one's brighter than the other or something like that. Rim lighting is something that I also use a lot, very religiously, whenever it comes to really all of my materials. So rim lighting, obviously it's just going around the rim of your asset and it's adding lighting, but the cool thing about it is you can change your colors. So I'll normally do like kind of a skin tone-ish color. You can also do replace, multiply, mixed, and screen. I like to use the add and multiply. So multiply will kind of give it more of like a rendered look. Obviously it's kind of adding that shading. You can add and change the width and the sharpness and the rim power, and of course your normal strength, and then of course invert. So what I normally do is I'll add a multiply, and you might be thinking, like if you set it all the way up to sharpness and maybe the width up a little bit more, you might be thinking this is how people get outlines on their avatar. This is not. Please don't use rim lighting for outlines. It's gonna look funny at certain angles. I don't know how to explain it. It just is. This is not how people use outlines. So you can use your rim lighting, multiply however you see fit. I normally add just a little bit just to kind of give her, because I like my avatars to have a little bit more of like a rendered look, from being like, you know how they look in like Blender through renders. I guess that's the best way I can explain it. And I'm gonna do a little bit of mixed color. I think we're good. And then I'll add another one, and I'll leave this on as the add, and I'll make this a much lighter color once it loads. And I sometimes, not always, but sometimes I'll do invert, just to kind of give it like a, especially for the body. I think the body is probably where I would do it the most. So let me go ahead and actually, let me copy and go to the body and show you guys what I'm talking about. If I go paste. So you can see it kind of gives like that, like almost like sweat shine. Right now it looks like kind of more plasticky because I have it like super high. But you can change the width, of course, you can change the power, you can change whatever you need to. But this is how people will kind of give their avatars some of that shine. This isn't the only way, but this is just one way that people will do that. Obviously, you can uncheck invert, which I think I prefer. And then if I do something like that, I don't know, it just kind of adds more of like a little like cartoony stylized look to it. Again, totally up to you, but definitely play around with rim lighting. It's something that I absolutely swear by. I love level of love playing with rim lighting. Definitely adds a lot to your avatars, I think. So I'm going to paste that onto the body, and you can see just how much more, I don't know, like depth it kind of gives it versus, so like if we look like here in like the armpit section, if we turn off our rim lightings, see how much more flat it looks versus with rim lighting on. It just kind of, I don't know. Rim lighting is something that I swear by. Matte caps obviously doesn't make a huge difference. Like I said, very small difference. Rim lightings, absolutely. I swear by it. You can play around more with like reflections and specular, this clear coat, environmental rim, stylized specular, all these kinds of different things are ways to add more lighting to your avatar, to kind of give it that shine or give it more of a in-depth look. And outlines. This is where the actual outlines of your avatar is. Yes, it's going to spawn in kind of funny. So outlines, you can change it to, you know, whichever you feel is best. I would definitely take the size down. Maybe do like I'm gonna say like 0.001. And you can do mask and textures just like we had there on the head. And this is what most people do. You don't have to do black. You could do red. You could do brown. You could do whatever you want. There is emissions. There is blending. There's color adjust, fixed size over distance, lighting, all this kinds of different stuff you can do. But this is on the newer versions of Pwaomi. And I don't know. I just think that this looks a lot better than trying to use rim lighting for the outlines. But yeah, I don't think this is on the older versions. I want to say this came in on like Pwaomi, like in the later versions of 8, I think. I like very, very, very thin outlines. I haven't been adding outlines to my avatars, but it's something that I'm wanting to start doing. So I'm just going to add just the tiniest little outline. Same thing. I'm going to copy and paste that onto the head so that they match. But yeah, if you're using an older version of Pwaomi and you don't see the outlines, then that's why. They are more recent, on more recent versions of the Pwaomi. So not necessary, but something that I have noticed is more popular and a lot of people like. While we're here, if you, and this is something I will do my best to remember whenever it comes to toggles, if you ever have something that you want to be a toggle, like I want the outlines to be a toggle, I'm going to go to the outline size and I'm going to click renamed when locked. And this check marks animated and renamed. The reason I'm going to rename it is it's just going to help keep things, I guess, like smoother whenever we go into animations, but I'll cover that more whenever we start talking about our toggles, as to why I think renaming is best and more helpful. But basically what this is going to do is once we lock our materials, because your materials have to lock in order to upload to vrchat, then this is going to be left open. So once a material locks, you can't edit or click on anything else. But as long as it has animated when locked or renamed when locked and animated, it'll be left available to edit. So basically I'll be able to go through and make a toggle to say if somebody activates this toggle to turn outlines off, it'll go all the way down to 0. But that's something that I'm going to obviously have to record and edit. So that's something that I definitely wanted to point out while making your materials. I think that's helpful, especially for like emissions. You'll see a lot of avatars will have like an emission slider. And that's what they did is they went through on all their materials. Yes, it's very time consuming. And they just turned on that animated when locked. And then they went through and made a toggle and an animation to basically say if somebody activates this toggle, then they can put a slider basically on the emissions and turn the emissions up or down in case it's too bright or too low in some worlds. The last thing that I for sure play around with every single time, I'll show you emissions here in a second on something else, but glitter. You don't have to use glitter. I like it, which is weird. I'm not a very like glitter person, but this is how I make my avatars have like a little bit of shine. I personally up this to no end, so I make the glitter spots like super duper duper tiny. You can play around with the size if you want. In the minimum and maximum brightness, I turn that down just a hair. I change the speed to 1. Speed is like literally in game if the glitter will like do like if it'll like kind of like pop around. Glitter bias and angle range. are what I play with. So if you notice, let's try not to do that. Okay, here on our neck, you can see it's kind of more of a, oh, this isn't really, okay, there we go. So you can see it's kind of like more concentrated versus, you know what I'm saying? And like all three of these sliders kind of do it. So just kind of play around with it to figure out exactly what you would like. But I normally keep it kind of low, and I'll keep this fairly low as well. And what that's going to do is it's just going to put just the slightest glitter on her to kind of give her almost the look of like skin pores. And it also just kind of gives her a little bit of a shine. Very, very small effect that I really, really like. Again, not necessary at all. Totally up to you. And I definitely have like specific settings that I prefer to use for my avatar. So I will be grabbing those and changing those after I finish recording. But I like to play around with glitter. And it's another way you can add, like I said, kind of that like sweat or more like skin look to your avatars. The last thing that I use is emissions. So I wanted to click on the bikini for this one instead. And this is all under special effects. I don't think I mentioned that earlier, but if I checkmark emission, like I had said earlier, this asset set came with its own emission mask. So I can drag that on there. Fix now. And if you turn up emission strength, obviously it's not working, and that's because the color is set to black. So if I turn it up to white, now it is working. And obviously if you set the emission strength super high, not only is it going to be blinding in vrchat, but it's going to make it look kind of funny. So you actually just kind of need it somewhere, maybe around here. It's not so pixelated, it won't be overly blinding in game, but it's enough to kind of give, give that emission look on the assets. Now, something that you can do with emissions that I think is really, really cool, you can play around with these here. So there's color adjust, which obviously is like hue shift, center out, light based, and blinking and scrolling. So this is something that I like to play around with. Let's see. Let's do center out, and what that's going to do if I turn it down, let's go into play mode real quick. So center out, you actually need a second map for it to use, and that's this emission map right here. And I like to use noise maps, which are part of Unity itself. It's nothing that you have to import, but these are basically black and white maps that it's going to tell. Imagine this is like a really big plane going across this bikini set. And since we turned on center out, it's going to tell it to start here and then follow this map and go outwards. So see, now it does this like really, really cool effect. And we can turn it up and you can see it's kind of like scrolling. Obviously there is scrolling. There's blinking that you can do. There's the scrolling, which is going to make it go. Obviously you can change it to, whichever direction you want it to be, X, Y, or Z. There's all kinds of stuff you can do with emissions. I definitely recommend playing around with those. It's probably my favorite thing to set up on avatars because it's such a fun way to add like cute little details, but also just something like really fun for the ADHD gremlins like me. I don't know. I think emissions are very, very popular and very, very widely used because there's just so much that you can do with them. That's really honestly a very basic introduction to emissions. Obviously you can add multiple, so you can have multiple colors. There's all kinds of different noise maps you can use. Matte caps as a map if you wanted to. There's all kinds of fun stuff you can do with it. So definitely suggest looking into those. Another thing that a lot of people use is audio link. I struggle to get audio link to work and I haven't really done my research on it. So I'm not able to put that necessarily into this tutorial, but it is here. If you guys want to play with that, I would suggest looking up more tutorials on YouTube that are a little bit more familiar with it. They can give you more specifics and help you how to test it. But it is here if you guys want to start playing around with that. But I am very sorry that I don't know very much about it myself. But yeah, that's kind of the basics of what I do for my materials. I'll go through and like here on the hair, I'll go through and kind of figure out like here with the trans clipping, it's kind of showing through like her body and stuff in like a weird way. And then fade, I know that's going to show up kind of funny in mirrors. So like I'm going to leave it to cut out. I'll go through and I'll adjust my alpha, and then I'll go through and put in some rim lighting and some matte caps and all that kind of stuff, just to kind of give it a little bit more depth. So I definitely recommend taking your time with your materials, get them set up exactly how you want to. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. It's going to really make your avatar pop, instead of just those basic flat materials. One thing I did want to mention, I'll definitely cover in the next video whenever we go to do our toggles, is decals. So with Unity, the best way I can think how to explain it is there's a lot that goes into what makes an avatar heavy. One of them is matte swaps. So a matte swap is like, for this bikini, you can see I have like a black pink version. I have like 2 different red versions, right? And then for the hair, I have all these different hair colors I want to use. A matte swap by definition would be if I sit here and I duplicate this hair material and I set up 6 different hair materials to have all these different colors on them in the texture spot, like up here. That's technically a matte swap. But there is a more optimized way you can go about it that will save on your avatar's texture memory. The only thing is it's not quite as smooth as an actual matte swap, which we will cover in the tutorials or in the next toggle video. So in the next toggle video, we'll cover it. Where it'll be like an instant, like immediate change from white to black to red to pink to whatever. But if you are okay with kind of having like a more kind of medium or middle ground, I guess, to save on some texture memory, you can turn on decals. And you're going to want to make sure that your alpha section under this decal is animated. So what this is if I drag in my decal to be black, obviously it is now black. That's because the alpha is set to 1. And if I turn it down, it's 0. So I'll make a radial toggle, and I can have it to where it'll be, instead of just an immediate change, it'll all of these will be on a radial, and it'll slowly do this between each different hair. Now the only issue is that does mean that it's gonna have these kind of like weird like gray moments. I personally like to leave it that way because I know some people prefer gray hair, so now I don't actually have to add it. They can come in here and adjust it themselves. Or if they're going from this brown to blonde, they can have kind of that like middle ground in between the 2 colors. It's something that I prefer, but it doesn't always look exactly how we would intend for it to. So it's totally up to you if you want to do like an actual matte swap or a radial. Again, we will cover how to set those up later, but if you want to put anything on a radial or like skin tones or anything, and save on memory, decals are a way to go. There is a tutorial that I will link below for how to set up a smoother skin tone radial, which I would like to put on this avatar, but I am not the most familiar with how to set it up, so I need to go watch the tutorial myself. So I can't really tell you guys how to prepare for that, but I will set that in the video or in the description down below if you guys want to watch that ahead of time, because I'm going to be watching it ahead of time so that I can add it to this avatar, and I'll do my best to kind of recap what is taught in that video. But it's a video created by another creator named Velvet, so all the credit goes to her on how that is set up. I don't believe she uses decals, and hers is more of a smooth way, but it does involve like actual matte swap animations, so it's still not quite as optimized as decals. But again, it's kind of, where do you want to sacrifice? Do you want to sacrifice the extra memory to have the smoother radial and the transitions, or do you want to save on the texture memory and just use decals? But I did want to point that out because I use decals quite a lot. A lot of creators will use them for like tattoos. So instead of adding that extra memory of a full matte swap to have tattoos, they'll just put it here on a decal and have the animation to where whenever you click the toggle for tattoos, it just shoots all the way up to 1, and now you have tattoos. So just something I wanted to kind of point out that I find really, really helpful and that I use quite a lot is the decals. So that if you ever want to have like matte swaps, like I'll probably be doing that for like the red option and the pink option on the harness, but that's something that we'll cover in the next video. So yeah, I think that's it for how I set up my material. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the wrap up stage of this video, and then the next one we'll actually get working on all of our toggles. Just one more time, throwing it out there as a disclaimer, please know and understand that in the next video, my materials most likely will not look the same as they do right now because I'm going to go through, I am super duper duper picky about my materials. It normally takes me quite a few hours to set up my materials and my emissions and get everything exactly how I want. So things will most likely look different come the next tutorial, and I do apologize for that. But I wanted to be able to at least show you guys the different sections that I like to play around. So that way there's nothing that I'm doing off screen that I haven't taught you guys. It's just going to be my own personal settings and taking the time to perfect it. So I'm sorry that it will most likely look different. Just want to let you guys know. So, okay. I am so sorry that this video turned out to be quite a lot longer than I anticipated, but there is so much to set up in Unity, and there's so much to do. And while there's a lot of very like quick basic things that you can do just to kind of like breeze through Unity and just kind of get it done, I want to stick to this tutorial being, or the series being, as much information as I can give you guys to help answer any little tips and tricks that I know of that might help you guys in the future, or that you guys might not know about. I just, like I said, I wanted to be able to share everything that I can with you guys so that y'all have all the knowledge and tools that I have at your disposal. So in this specific video, we covered importing into Unity, setting up our avatar as a humanoid and the importance of doing that as quickly as you can, as well as checking the armature and rig for it. We also discussed how to organize your Unity projects with folders, with dividers, with renaming things like that. And also stressed the importance of, please be careful that if you are going to organize things, do not move things around in the armature section of your avatar because that will break things later. I did talk about how, if you do that, it could break things if you need to update it in Blender and if you need to update any clipping in Blender. I have not forgotten that we don't currently know how to update our avatar in Blender, so I will show you guys that most likely in the next video or the one after. Just kind of depends where I feel like it falls the best, but like I've mentioned before, to do that, we're going to be using the tool called Pumpkins Tools to update our FBX. So it is something that we still will cover, I absolutely promise, but for this tutorial video, I wanted to focus more on just kind of getting started in Unity and getting everything situated and organized, as well as setting up our materials the most basic of basic ways, and then all the different sections that I play with. So like the rim lighting, matte caps, glitter, etc. I can't recommend it enough. Go through, play around with it. There's all kinds of different things that you can do, especially as you get more comfortable with animating things for your materials like I showed with the emissions. Or adding like the animated when locked so that you can maybe do different things and like put an actual animation on it. There's all kinds of crazy things I've seen lots of creators do. So definitely take your time with your materials, get everything set up how you want, play around with it, find your settings. I'm going to be going through and doing that for the avatar, so she will look a little bit different come the start of the next video than what she looks like in this video, just because I'm very particular and I like to take my time setting up my materials. But next video, we will jump into making our toggles. There's going to be two different ways. I believe I mentioned this at the beginning of the tutorial series. There is a tool called v.3 Creator, which I use religiously, and it does auto make your toggles. It's very, very quick, very easy to use, and I definitely recommend it. But I am also a firm believer of knowing how to use things in case the tool breaks. So if the creator of v.3 ever retires and he's not able to update it anymore, or if it breaks and while you're waiting for him to update it or something like that, I think it's very important for you guys to know how to manually make your toggles. Especially because sometimes using tools, it can have bugs. So it might break something on your toggle. And if you don't know how to fix it yourself, then you're kind of stuck because all you know is the tool. So I will be covering both in the next video. We're going to do the traditional way first, so that way you guys understand the basics of how toggles work, how to make an animation, how to edit things like that, and all the different sections that goes into making a toggle. And then we will look at using v.3 Creator. And the reason I want to include that in the tutorial series is I know quite a lot of people that use v.3 Creator but maybe don't know how to do specific things with it. So we will cover both. We're going to do simple on-off toggles, as well as either or. So something that's been requested a lot is if you have like multiple hairs, like 2 or 3 hairs or multiple outfits, how to toggle between multiple of the same type of item. So we're going to cover all of that in the next video, as well as matte swaps, and skin tones and hair colors, all that kind of fun stuff. So the next video will also be very long. I am deeply sorry. But I want to keep Unity broken up as much as I can. But like I said, there is quite a lot to cover in Unity, so the videos will be a little bit longer than normal, and I do apologize for that ahead of time. So that being said, I think that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know in the comments down below, or join my Discord server and ask there. And yeah, I think that's it. So I will see you guys in the next video, and thanks so much for being here.